Got it. Beautiful. Tez, I was looking up some of the research that I had this morning off from the emails that you'd sent me the other day, and I was going back to 1973. You went to the Gawler races, my understanding, just to the picnic races, saw a quarter horse race, an exhibition race, and jumped on board. Is it, could you remember it vividly or not?
Yeah, I did. They had a horse function day, which included some demonstration of show jumping, dressage, and other things, and this one sprint race as a demonstration. It really hadn't got going in South Australia by then, but they had a set of barrier gates there, and I think there was either 8 or 10 horses. I can't remember exactly, but they were just shiny looking horses, and what their background was, I didn't know, apart from one, the horse that won the race by about 30 metres or 40 metres. He won it by over 400 metres. He was a horse called Warning Flag. It was imported by Willamurra Stud, and he ended up being a good stallion, and he did race a couple of times interstate and set benchmark time ratings and that. But it just blew me away to see this one horse as though the others weren't in the same race. And
that's incredible.
That was it. That's what I needed to do.
Yeah.
So
thereafter,
beg pardon?
Sorry. Thereafter, I mean, did you sort of try and get some contacts, finding horses, getting to know the sport, the breed, yada yada?
Probably that was in about 73. It probably took me another 4 years, and I bought an old, well, it wasn't that old, but well, he was supposed to be broken in thoroughbred stallion, and I went and saw him, and the fella had a saddle on him, and he said he's broken in. It was about 15 k's from home. So when I got on him, I realised he really wasn't broken in, and
we've all been there too.
15 k's later, when I got back to my home, he was broken in. That's where it started.
Good.
$180 thoroughbred stallion with a Roman nose that was probably bred to run 2 miles.
Yes.
And I had a saddle and a length of lunge rope and a halter and a bridle, and that's where I started. With the help of Kathy Whiting, who was shared a house with me and some other strappers at the time, she very well, perhaps reluctantly to start with, offered to ride this horse a bit to get him educated. And I had planned originally to try and get into thoroughbred racing, but with Bart Cummins and Colin Hayes and a few other notable thoroughbred trainers operating in South Australia, the chance of me getting a horse that even get to the races was remote. And there was an ad in the local, or in the South Australian paper, saying if anyone interested in sprint racing, which was explained because no one really knew much about it, to ring this number and rock up and have a look. And that's what I did. And I took this old horse along. After a while, I had a $50 horse float that came out of the 1920s that I bought off a shearing contractor that I used to work for. I had to put a new floor in it, and I painted it phone box red so everyone knew I was coming. And there's one old horse, and my friend Kathy was riding track work for Colin Hayes, and she had some, like track pants and boots and all that sort of thing, and skid with. So we rocked up at the races there, and I can remember not hearing them, but seeing the looks on these posh people with their flash horses and their flash horse transporting things. Looking, they were just saying, look at these hillbillies, So I ran a couple seconds and thirds in the maiden races, and then had enough money out of the place prize money to nominate for the Open. and he'd run in the open as well, and always run a place, because thoroughbreds always seem to run better the second time what they did the first time.
Yeah, sure.
And it was Willamara had a good track. It was a big stud, a really big flash stud. And the track was 300 metres, and they had about a barely 100-metre runoff, and you had to put the skids on when you got to the finishing line, because otherwise you'd run through a wall at the end of the track. That was it. And that's where I started.
Yeah.
And then
go on.
You go on.
No, because I might have jumped too far. I was going to jump across to Queensland then, when you obviously saw more of an opening, more of an opportunity, or better, bigger races, better prize money. Is that fair to say, while you took across when you went to Queensland?
Well, I went to Victoria before I went to Queensland, raced both in South Australia and Victoria. And the Victorian was bigger, like more money, more meetings, more different venues. And I left the southern states at the end of 1983, and I'd been there for competing probably for 4 or 5 years, but it was only short seasons, you know. It might only been for 3 months a year, and then there'd be nothing, big gaps. And Mary Elliott, who was then, or Mary Matner as she was then, was the manager of Willamara Stud. She was an English woman and a very, very talented horse person, and a very good organizer of things. She felt sorry for me running this old thoroughbred around, and even though we did win some picnic races up the bush with him, she found me a Jetmaster stallion, a first cross stallion. He was about 6-year-old, and he'd been used for roping, and he was in good nick and a nice horse, but the fellow had lost interest, and because of that wasn't doing so well. So I don't know whether Willamara Stud owned him and they wanted to farm him out to someone to do something, but anyway, I scored him. He too wasn't quick enough for 300 metres, always running a place. He was out of a Manor High thoroughbred mare, and Manor High being the sire of many good horses, including Manicato. We raced him around the picnics in the bush all over South Australia, and I think he won about 25 800-metre races. And because he was being a rope horse, and in the chutes in roping events, they have a piece of elastic across the front. The horse can't break that until the calf goes. Well, in those early days on those tracks, they had a stand-up starts and a long piece of elastic across the track. And Mighty Jet used to stick his nose on the elastic, and Kathy was always smart enough to get him near the inside of the row, nearest the running rail. And the moment he felt that move a thousandth of an inch, it was gone. And he put 4 lengths in him out of the barrier. And he won races everywhere.
Wow. So when you got to Queensland, Terry, were you then the new kid on the block again?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely the new kid on the block.
Was that a good thing? Because, you know, they probably it didn't take much notice. There wasn't social media like there is now. You know, a lot of the Terry Chinner would have been a little bit unknown to them up there. Yet by the time you got there, you had a fair bit of experience under your belt.
I had been a premier trainer in South Australia for 2 or 3 years, and then won the combined South Australian and Victorian premiership, AQHA premiership, on the year that I left.
They would have heard of you.
Well, whatever write-ups would have been in the Australian Quarter Horse magazine, because the Australian Quarter Horse actually they were the behind the whole racing, even though they didn't actually run. All the results went there, and and when I got up there, and it wouldn't have mattered who I was or where I came from, anyone from Mexico was hated as soon as they got up there. Queenslanders were not appreciative of any southern states trainers, because there'd been some from New South Wales, Les Buckingham and trying to think, Ian Rosno, and others who made a name for himself around Sydney, because the racing around Sydney in those early days was even though being private racing was quite competitive, people like the ones who imported the first major stallies into Australia were racing their horses on those private tracks. It was good to start with, as it was in South Australia and Victoria, but there's no money. There's no consistent flow of money coming in, and that's why everyone left, sort of thing.
Okay. Terry, we have to talk about instant reaction. And, it's funny, he was here. I remember he was here for a holiday at some stage.
Yes.
And he was in what we call, the shit dam paddock, because that's where the effluent ran through to the dam. And, not the best fencing paddock on the place, but, I would just sort of walk past and say, oh, g'day, Brick. He was just this chestnut that was always hidden in the long, long grass, because you imagine the grass around the effluent dam, 2 meters high. And this chestnut was just in amongst it day after day, had no, he didn't go near the fences, he was easy. But going back to him, when he first came to you, was he special from the beginning, or was he a slow learner? Did he pick it up just like that, or was he, take a bit of educating?
Well, I got him at 3 weeks of age. I was tied up with a property developer up there that was in bad times of building holiday homes up and down the coast in the mid-80s. He was trading horses as part of people paying for these places, trading horses and cars and property and everything in that. So he came to a fella's place called Ken Blakemore, who at the time stood Giant Pass, Cudgo Sea.
Oh, heck. Okay.
And he lived at Yamundi. And when I first went to Queensland, I bought a property not far up the road, and I'd heard about him through his advertisements in the Quarter Horse magazine. So I went and saw him. Anyway, he had a caravan out the back, and he put us up in the caravan for about a month while that property was settling. And and they were doing it a bit tough. Anyone of them had gone into horses to make money. There's no money in horses. Only the providers of services make any money. Anyway, he was doing it, and nice people. They give you the shirt off their back. Anyway, this Paul Jones, the entrepreneur, called in to have a look at some horses, and Blakemore's were trying to offset what they had there into a holiday unit, perhaps not to live in, but as an investment, as most did. Anyway, Giant Pass was mentioned, and anyway, this Paul Jones rocked up in his Rolls Royce and went across to the house and had a conversation, and then he came back out, and I was sitting on the rail of Giant Pass's yard, and in those days smoking a cigarette, which I haven't done since. And he said to me, "Is this Giant Pass?" I said, "Yes." He said, "What can you tell me about him?" I said, "He won a race or two as a 2-year-old in America." I said, "He's of the best bloodline to this date to come to Australia." And I said, "And I've trained some of his progeny in the southern states, and they're pretty good horses, He said, "Well, what's your deal?" I said, "I just bought a place up the road with basically a small stud, and I'm going to train horses up here and perhaps breed a few mares, whatever." He said, "What sort of a deal would you do to stand this stallion for?" Of course, I nearly fell off the fence, because I thought this horse was eating a bit.
Yeah, sure.
We come to some arrangement, Paul, no worries. So he went back in and came out, and he said, "Well, I've just traded 75,000 for it."
Wow.
He said, "And when would you like to pick him up?"
Wow. Okay.
I mean, that's like winning the lottery for me. We're a horse person.
Yeah. Sure.
I remember what's in Chalani had a Giant Pass filly that won the Derby down there, and a few other races. And I knew the type of horse they were. And Spectacular Bev was another one. He was a good Giant Pass. And so I thought, this will do me. So but then to get some mares quality mares to go to Giant Pass on behalf of the owner. Because Easy Dozen was making a mark in Australia. He only been there a couple of years, and his progeny was winning everywhere. And I said to him, we need to get, firstly, a horse by Giant Pass to race to promote him, and we need to get a couple of good mares to put to him so that you get the best mares around. Anyway,
of course, yeah.
The Brick, he came from one of two mares that were bred to Easy Dozen, and I saw him. He was bred in central Queensland, and I went up and had a look at him. And there was two mares, Miss Edelio and Katika. They were both imported mares. Both had a history of being good producers, and I wanted an Easy Dozen filly out of either of them, or if not a filly, a colt. And when I had a look at Instant Reaction at 3 weeks of age, that'll do me.
Yeah.
He was a bit of all right. And the other one had a filly, but I didn't like her. Like she was, I mean, she turned out all right. Her name was Miss Jessica Ruth. She won a few. John Mulwiney trained her. But we traded 3 mares and the 3-week-old foal. I think it was $80,000 for the package. And I took possession. They were sent down to me at Skyrings Creek.
Right.
And
well, it's not cheap, Terry. You were going back in the 80s, early 80s.
But it wasn't my money though. It's easy to do things for people when it's their money they're spending, right?
True.
And I probably traded in that 12 months. I don't know exactly, somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million worth of horse flesh on behalf of this fella. And I picked the eyes out of them, kept them.
Yes.
And the rest were sold on for. There was a lot of horse people trying to who'd spent a lot of money and could see that they were going broke, and they just had to quit. And I got a truckload of horses come up from New South Wales by a horse called Boliro's Cause, who was an imported stallion, who was a very good stallion, and that fella had him and a lot of progeny and some mares, and he traded the lot in. And when they got to my place, the Brisbane livestock, I walked out with a couple of halters, and they'd bossy with a halter, and we went out to take these horses off. He said, "You won't need them." He said, "We had to run them on with blue heeler dogs." He said, "They're not handled." He said, "You wouldn't touch them." Anyway, we got the stallion off. He was civil because he'd done, he'd been broken and educated. He was an old horse.
Okay.
We got him off. And one of the colts, beautiful colt, I looked through a peephole on the side of the Brisbane livestock, and I was met with a back foot at 100 miles an hour, fair and where I was.
Yeah. And
I turned and walked around. We got one other filly off that ended up dragging Bossy through the swimming pool. And last seen going over the hill about 5 k's away, not him, but the horse. And I went back to the fella and I said, shut the back door. I said, Caboolture's got doggers, haven't they? He said, yeah. I said, drop them off there and you can pick up what you get for them. And that was
it. Really?
They were gone.
Yeah. Just
never had the facilities to handle them. They were just 5- and 6-year-old horses, never been handled.
Yeah, that's hard.
And much as I hated to do it, that's what you common sense. Common sense. Anyway, you progress.
When I'll get to Glenn Boss in a minute. When Instant Reaction actually started to race, was he immediately successful, or did it take a while for the penny to drop, or did he just hit the ground running?
As a yearling, I obviously handled them all the way along. As a yearling, if you put him on the horse walker, it was like dragging a sulky dog. There's no way I want to walk.
No.
Anyway, with a little bit of encouragement, he became quite tractable, and he would have nearly became a gelding at that stage. That's what I was thinking. Anyway, a fellow by the name of Kathy went overseas for 12 months. or nearly
Mm.
12 months, and Bossy and I were the only two regular horse people there. And apart from my farrier, a Scotchman by the name of Tom Affleck, who ended up being a racing partner of the Brick, and he broke him in.
Okay.
Tom had been a breaker for Tommy Smith prior to that.
Wow.
A very good horseman. His father had been a leading trainer in England, and Tom obviously worked for him as a young fella. And he was telling me one day how he quite often led the horses around when they went to the major meetings, and it was not uncommon to leg up Lester Piggott on a horse. So he was sort of mixing in the creme of the creme, you know. And anyway, Tom broke the Brick in for me, and by then Kathy was back from America, and we got him going, and then he came to grief. The track at Gympie's a sand track, and they put because when they have the show, the Gympie show is a big show for Anyway, they put in a trench across the track in the straight to put more electricity cables across there, and filled it up with sand, but never told anyone it might be sinking or anything. And I give him a gallop up the track one morning, probably his first fair dinkum gallop, and he hit that trench with one of his front legs. And how he never broke it, I'll never know. Anyway, he went a bit shinny, and I sent him down to an adjustment place at Yamundi because, because I knew even at that stage that he could get along a bit, you know, like he was, as you said, pretty quick off the mark. And I sent him down there to be about a month, and then bring him back for a month to 6 weeks to train him up to go to the Toowoomba Sires in April. And of course, in those days, the Toowoomba Sires, which was a $60,000, $80,000 2-year-old race, they used to have all the trials 10 days before the race, and there might be some 200 2-year-olds some years. 200 2-year-olds go through the heats, and the fastest 10 would make the final. In latter years, the year after he raced, they did it differently. They had because you could, if you raced them before and won a race, you wouldn't have been eligible. They had to be for the first starters. That's the way they initially did it. Being Queensland, things a bit different up there to everywhere else. Anyway, so he was down at this flash adjustment place, and I mean, it really was a flash adjustment, white things all around, and the only thing that wasn't white was the gate. It was a black gate. Anyway, they had a thunderstorm down there early one morning, and lightning must have struck pretty close to where he was, and he took off across the paddock. And the only place that wasn't white that he thought wasn't anything there was the gate, and he hit it full bore.
Oh, Terry. Okay.
And the gate was like that. And the woman rang me up at 6 o'clock in the morning and almost in hysterics because she knew how valuable this little colt was to me.
Yeah.
And anyway, taking a bit of skin off that front leg, and other than that, he was all right.
Thank God. Okay.
So I said, well, look, I'll come and pick him up just so I can treat his leg and everything. Went down and picked him up. And of course, my place was 17 acres right on the Bruce Highway. And like most places up there, you had 6 barbed wires. It didn't have anything else. So he went back out in the paddock where he'd been used to with 6 barbed wires for a few weeks to recuperate. And he was shin sore because of the hitting. Well, I mean, shin sore, damaged cannon bone because he'd hit the gate. So for the next 6 weeks, I couldn't sprint him up. I just had to walk him on the horse walker and lunge him and treat his leg. And we went to Toowoomba Sires heats with having had probably two fair dinkum gallops and a jump out prior to him hurting his leg the first time.
Okay.
And he rocked up on the day he had a saddle on him once in 6 weeks. We took him to Toowoomba and he broke the long-standing record for the.
That was the race. Okay,
that was the race. His first start, and
goodness.
After after the horse alongside of him, flipping over backwards, and the barrier attendant having his leg broken in the stall next to the brick, and they couldn't get the brick out because the horse was laying across. They didn't take any of them out. They stood there while they got the horse out and set the leg. They were probably there for 20 minutes or something in the barrier.
Yeah. Goodness, Terry.
Even though it was a heart-stopping, I knew after that I had a horse that was sensible.
Yes, quite memorable.
There, first start at the races. And
that's amazing. Yeah, and went on from there. I remember you telling me that Cassie said to you at one stage, she came back after winning a race, and she said it was almost frightening because she said his body was running ahead of his brains. I remember you saying that to me, or something similar.
That was that race.
He was so fast, he was almost out of control. Something like that. Do you remember that?
That first race.
Right. Right.
She had to ease him a bit. She was frightened he'd cross his front legs. He was going that hard, you know. And if you look at some of the races he won on video, as he's getting to the line, his mouth's open. She's swinging on him, slowing him down. He was very quick. He was very quick.
That's an understatement, Tess. Terry, I was looking, sometimes when you have an instant reaction, that horse, you can have very good horses that sort of stay in the shadows because that's your star, the star of the stable's the star of the stable. They're there because they're so good at what they do. What was the next horse that you thought wasn't underrated, but was a really good horse? What's another star you would have said you had?
You would have heard of this bloke because Donnie owned him, Sonic Shadow.
Yes. Yeah.
He won 16 or something. Former track record.
Yeah.
Hang on. We're going to run out of time shortly.
We've done our 40 minutes. Have we?
We're not yet, but we've got a little way to go. It says upgrade now. Well, I would, but I don't know how much.
Don't you dare spend money, Terry. We can revisit. No, this has been good. Good.
Sonic Shadow. I never had him as a 2-year-old. I saw he used to work at Gympie Track, and I had Easy Charger then. He was probably one of the best as well. And they used to run similar times in track gallops. And the fellow who trained Sonic Shadow used to train him like a thoroughbred. And I've often thought that if I could get hold of him and train him like a quarter horse, he wouldn't get beat, And anyway, one day the fella said to me, this horse is always good first up. He won a race, but then he just doesn't, he just loses it. But he didn't stop. I think he used to give him 3 laps of the track every morning. And I said, well, you want to sell him? He said, well, I do actually. I said, how much do you want for him? He said, I want a couple of grand for him. And I said, I'll see what I can do. Because we didn't have mobile phones back in those days, nor computers in the 80s. No. So I rang up Donnie and said, hey, I got this horse up here. I reckon he'll be a boom horse. Because at that stage she had one, but it was average, she said, how much? I said, I reckon I can get him for 1,800. And she said, oh, Jesus, I don't know whether I got spare money. I said, well, I wouldn't be ringing you if everyone didn't owe me money, because I said my credit card's maxed as well. And being completely honest, she said, I'll see what I can do. Anyway, she rang me back that night and said, yeah. I said, well, I can pay him, but as long as you can fix me up, relatively soon.
Sure.
Anyway, we did. First race was that was in November. First race for him was on January the 1st. Her and her boyfriend, Barry Devine, must have done a deal to buy him. And he won a race over 400, and I had him in a 300, a sort of a special 3-year-old 300-metre race at Gympie, and Craven was there, and Buckingham, all those top trainers from up in the North Downs. Yeah. And I said to her, he was 20 to 1 or something, because he'd never competed so well at that short distance. And I said to her, well, go and put some money on. She said, oh, that'd be too short for him. I said, how much you got? She said, oh, this amount. And I said, well, leave enough to get home, but go and whack the rest on him each way. I said, he's 20-1, and I reckon he can win. And she said, she shook her head. She said, all right, so leave for faith. Bossy was on him. He's on the outside of the track. And I've still got the photo of the video somewhere where he donkey licked him. And she just stood there with her mouth open. And nothing came out, which would be something different for Donnie. There was just nothing came out. She said, how did you know? I said, well, I train him like a quarter horse. The previous fellow was training him like a thoroughbred. I said, and he's got ability. And
Terry, I know we're going to run out of time, and I want to run this by you because speaking of Donnie, you know, I have memories of you and Donnie came to visit us in Queensland on holidays, and it was a beautiful day, and she had a beautiful boy, Sterling. It was a day I remember, and I remember her and I got on the wines, and anyway, and the sun was out. Too much giggling, but Terry, something I read this morning I wanted to run by you, and I thought I'd ask you to comment on this, on the story of instant reaction. Donnie must have been asked about instant reaction. I wanted to ask your reaction about this comment. Instant reaction was one of the fastest horses I had ever seen, apart from my Tatankia Tanker. We're both electric. Well, would you like to comment on that, Tess?
Never wanting to be beaten, Donnie. A good competitor. They did share the track record at Gympie, both horses. My horse did it at his 4th lifetime start, and the other horse had had 20 starts before he did it. And he was a good horse, Tatankia. He was one of my favourites. If some people didn't realise the value, if you had a mare with Tatankia Tanker blood and you put the Easy Dozen blood over it, nothing would beat them. They'd be the 2 fastest horses. Barring Hemp Jet, they were the 2 fastest horses I ever trained.
Wow, Terry. Well, that's a good way to finish. Yeah. I said that's a good way to finish it if we're running out of time, Tess, because I thought next time we speak, we'll go on to have a bit of a chat with Hemp Jet and when we met, if that's okay with you.
What day? You want?
Are we still recording?
Yeah, we are. I think.
Okay. Well, hang on.
We mightn't be. I don't know. I can't see how many minutes. It doesn't say. It's funny. Still recording, so that's all right. You'll have to trim that bit.
2 professional people sitting here trying to work out how to work Zoom, because
well, we're getting it across anyway.
Oh, yeah, recording here. Yeah, that's it. We are. It's wonderful. I've enjoyed that. I really did, Tess. Perhaps I could touch base with you and see what suits you to catch up about the next, just going on from here. If
you can say any time but Friday. You can do it again tomorrow if you're not working or if you are working, whatever.
I'll have to text you because I've set all my monitor and that right on my calendar, and I'll give you a text. Is that okay?
That's all right. I'll save this and try and send it.
Good.
Okay?
Oh, you don't have to send it to me, Tess, but save it by all means. Thank you, Tess. Talk soon.
Cheers.
Cheers. Bye. Bye, mate. Ta-da.